Hello, everyone.
Good evening. Oh, sorry, Roy, go ahead. Apologies.
Apologies.
That up. I'm on your channel and stepping on your toes. Have at it.
We're too used to hosting, the both of us. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the FRS PC Division 3 here in Austria for round 4. I'm your host, Roy Waller, and I am joined in the commentary box tonight by Quimbulus. Welcome, Quimbulus.
Thank you for having me. Apologies again for stepping on your toes as we get ready to head to round 4 here, as you were saying, of this 10-round series, PC Division 3, and we're here at none other than the Red Bull Ring, the quickest lap we'll see on the calendar this season. We might see drivers down under 65 seconds for that quickest lap times in quali, and then, of course, the big DRS zones lead to some action zones. You know very well, turn 3. Big sharp hairpin at the top of the hill, and then of course you head down the hill into turn 4, which is your next best overtaking opportunity. But watch out for that gravel trap runoff. If somebody knocks over a brake marker board, you might miss your braking points.
And in terms of strategies, do you know what sort of things we've been looking at on the rest of the divisions? Anything to look out for?
Primarily around here, it's been the medium and hard tires. It's been the winners. You can see tire life-wise, the hard tire can do almost the entire race distance. So lap 1, lap 2 safety cars often bring that out. The soft tire, like much of F1 2022, has typically been a quali tire. Just doesn't really hold up in the race situations. But we've got a couple drivers that have been promoted out of Division 3, Gali and Zados, opening the way for drivers like Shizu and Mazda to be taking over the championship now as we go forward. And drivers are just about on their out laps, and I think it's about time we get some cars on track.
Indeed it is. And at the moment, we can see just got a couple of drivers finishing off their out laps, as we've got a well-sized lad who is just coming up to turn 3 now. We'll see how they take this. One of the trickiest corners on the calendar as you head uphill, and a bit of a blind apex there can catch some drivers out. As you were saying before,
Red Bull Ring, and it's only 10 corners, and you think 10 corners, how hard could it be? But they're 10 fairly unique corners. Well, 9. Turn 2 isn't much of a turn at all. But it's a tricky combination of 10 corners, a tricky track to set the car up. It's got those big, long straights, but as you mentioned, turn 3 is a difficult corner. It's easy to lock up under braking, hard to get the power down because it's a little bit of a camber change as you get there. Is another tricky corner. Turn 9, just trying to keep the car inside the track limits as they pitch it around the last couple of corners. And they'll set our first lap times of this 18-minute qualifying session and a 106.2. So some time to find there for sure. But a decent benchmark for Div 3 pace.
Yeah, and as you say, with the relatively few corners on the circuit, does mean that drivers, if you have 1 or 2 corners that you struggle with, you can find that your entire lap time just sort of falls away from you. Whereas, some circuits, you've got a mixture of, might have 15, 20 odd corners, and then you're, you can gain some, lose some somewhere. But with so few corners here, especially meaningful ones, really separates the fast from the not so fast.
Yeah, we have a couple drivers that are dipping down into the 105s now. Ruprath and Blackbird both crossing that barrier, but you mentioned meaningful corners. Sector 1 is from the start-finish line. You go through turn 1, and then the not much of a corner of turn 2, and that's the entire sector. You make a mistake on turn 1, you've cost your entire sector. You can lose 2-3 tenths easily, and that's a third of the lap done and dusted with just one opportunity to really gain or lose time.
Absolutely, and as you say, that turn 2, you always need to make sure you say that in air quotes because it's not a corner.
Absolutely, yeah. I keep saying, making sure to use turn 3 as turn 3 because if somebody goes to look at a track map, I just want to be able to say, that's what it says, we should stick to it. I'm sure the MotoGP guys would yell at me if I told them it was not a turn because they have to put a decent amount of lean to get to it. And I'm sure in some cars with a bit less downforce, actually, if you happen to do any bit of running in the wet in F1 2022 with the new Supercars editions, you do have to kind of lift out of that corner just a little bit. So it does create it as a bit of a corner. But with these high-performance pinnacle of motorsports F1 cars, high downforce, you just kind of turn the wheel and the car just sticks and goes.
As we've got a driver a little bit out of sequence here, as Squid heads out onto his first flying lap of the session. It's an interesting circuit as well, with the fact that with it being such a short lap, it is possible, I think, to actually set 4 flying laps here. And with the opportunity to offset yourself a bit from the other drivers and avoid the risk of hitting traffic.
If you're right on the money and you get out right at the start of the session, you can just about squeeze those 4 flying laps in. Another thing we've seen some of the other divisions doing, though, as well, as drivers, since you can only put a minimum amount of fuel in the car here around Austria,
as Squids loses
the back end out of it. Yep. And that is one of the things that we've been seeing in 2022 with the 18-inch tires. They've been a lot more sensitive to surface temperature, and that looked like one where you just lean on the right rear tire a little bit hard, the surface temperature spikes up, and your grip just disappears.
Yeah, it's worth pointing out that actually with the some of the changes that have been made with this version of the game, you can go from having a setup that works perfectly well in time trials, where your tire temperatures are set at a lovely 100 degrees Celsius, no fluctuations involved, and then suddenly you get yourself onto a race weekend with proper tire temperature simulations, and suddenly watch your tire temperatures shoot through the roof as you've got your pressures all wrong.
Yeah, luckily they made it a little bit easy with the latest couple of patches that made those changes. You basically go minimum tire pressures on the front, and that can keep you about in the window. But you mentioned those temperature simulations. Another thing drivers are going to have to be careful of, and we've seen it at a couple races already so far, is on your outlaps for in the race, you make your pit stops. Tire warm up, especially on compounds like the hards, not very quick. And especially with only one corner really through the first sector, it takes a while to get tires back up to operating temperature. We may see drivers make an undercut work timing wise, but they just can't get the tires heated back up again.
Yeah, that's the thing we've been seeing in the real F1 as well. The overcut is becoming a little bit more of a thing, especially with cooler track temperatures and the harder compounds. Can take a lap or two to actually get those tyres dialed in. And what you might actually see, perhaps not so much in the game, but we have been seeing in real life, and may well see it at some tracks in the game, is drivers opting to do the 2 outlaps in order just to get that tyre temperature in.
Division 4 yesterday, we saw Renovatio doing it pretty much every time, doing a double warm-up lap and then going for the flying lap, and they were the one that put it on pole, as Ruprecht goes a little bit quicker, 105.283 to extend their provisional pole. There's a couple yellow sectors around, but that is primarily just for drivers moving out of the way. We're creeping up on the halfway mark of this 18-minute qualifying session, about 9:45 left to go. So drivers on track, kind of in and out throughout this entire session. Unlike some other circuits, we're pretty much going to always have some car on track.
Yeah, and with such a, as we said, short circuit hit, sometimes you do find yourself tripping over each other in qualifying, so it probably does help this division ever so slightly that they only have 11 runners here tonight. Means there's a little bit more space on track for everyone.
Yeah, a little thinner grid. Last week we did have, as we mentioned, in the pre-show section here, drivers like Gali and Dr. Zados getting promotions up to Division 2. But unfortunately, we're running out of kind of the PC Division 4, PC Division 3. We're starting to run out of drivers, so we don't want to move too many people around. We're just about done. I think after round 3 was when we decided just not really going to do any more adjustments. So drivers should pretty much be locked in for the rest of the season. But looks like we've got the Aston Martin of D. on a lap here, and has shown pretty good pace throughout this season so far, and could be in contention around this track for a very good finish.
And with only just over 500ths of a second to make up to jump into P3 ahead of Madster, this lap could be one that counts, as we said. Probably going to get another run after this one with how short this lap is here at Austria. But every single one is going to count. You never know when you might make a mistake, as we have seen a disqualification for Erbil for parking in a dangerous location. It should probably maybe worth pointing out that that is something that can occur around this Austria circuit. If you spin out around that first corner, it can sometimes dump you into the pit lane.
Yeah, the track map, the dot was somewhere around turn 7 and 8, so I'm not sure where they got stuck up, but maybe they beached it and just didn't reset themselves the track. We've seen that happen from time to time where drivers just kind of panic and start hitting the throttle and spinning the wheels up.
Well, as we see, D. Lee has improved their time, but only by 0.04 of a second. So remains 0.01 of a second off of Madster. So as we said, going to get at least one more attempt to make it count around here. So he needs to get back in, get those tyre changed, and come back out and see if he can move himself up the order.
We still got 7 minutes left to go in this one. Of course, the rule of thumb for the F1 game and the 18-minute short qualifying session, usually big track evolution comes at about the 5 minutes to go mark. So the track is still not at its fully rubbered in state just yet, as Peter Ward is going out on a lap here. They still look to be doing that double warm-up because that red light is flashing on the back of the car. I don't believe they are setting a particularly quick time at the moment, but Renovatio, their Mercedes teammate, may have lent them some extra bit of information that might help them out. Peter Ward making the jump up from Div 4 to Div 3, or
actually,
no,
looks
I guess
like
they're
Peter
coming
Ward
in.
is coming into the pit lane, so that is going to be a quick turnaround for Peter Ward, I'd imagine. Get back up. Currently sitting in P7. As it does seem like the rear light of Squids is flashing as well, so we'll use that as an indicator that they're probably not on a lap. At least it's not going to be a fast one if they're not using their ERS.
I believe Ruprath is out
as
and
Open
on a lap
Mendes
at the
has
moment.
lost the rear, coming through the second sector, finds himself parked out on the grass. Is going to need to get that turned around and underway.
Yeah, we got Ruprath on a lap coming through in the Haas. He's just about to make his way through it. He's purple on his first sector, so going fastest overall. We'll see. Has gone personal best in the second sector. Has found about 0.2. It would appear on their lap. So looking to maybe go down into the 104s with a good last couple of corners. Pitches it into turn 9. Try and stay within the track limits. Just about tracing it right to the edge of those white lines. Can they get into the 104s?
And there we go. That's our first 104 of the afternoon. And, well, Ruprath there with a solid advantage over the rest of the field. Good 2.5 tenths ahead of, 3.5 tenths ahead of Blackbird.
It's a very good lap from them there. And Ruprath, from the start of this qualifying session, came out, set the fastest first lap time, then improved on their second run, has improved on their third run, and now should have plenty of time to get into the pit lanes and go again. Blackbird is backed out of their lap there with a bit slow movement through the middle sector. Mazda's next coming up. Seem to be on a decent flying lap. We'll see how they navigate. Have improved, according to the timings, about 1.5 tenths through those couple sectors. They need to find just a little bit more in those last two corners to jump up onto the front row. And no, they've invalidated, so they've got to bail out of this lap.
And so it looks like we've got just one other driver on a, looks like a flying lap, is Delta the Hunter. Coming around the final corner now to cross the start-finish line. Goes P6. Solid improvement there for Delta the Hunter.
Just about knocking on those 105 marks, so still getting sighted in. And, we've seen a couple drivers now invalidating their laps, and track limits. So much time is found so close to the limits here around Austria. So it's definitely something we may see in the race where final finishing positions could be decided by those dreaded 3-second track limits penalties.
Yeah, I hope you've got your abacus out. I think we're going to need it. As Wellside Lad comes into the final sector. There's yellow flags ahead as we've got a Mercedes. Looks like it's just warming up to go on a final push lap. But gets well out of the way of Wellside Lad, who's coming around turn 9 now into turn 10. He's about to cross the line. Currently sitting in 10th. Where will this put him? Stays 10th.
Being a 2,000th or 200ths slower than their previous best lap time, I don't know that they're going to have enough time to get around and go again. I think that's, unless they've got the fuel on board and try and go for a second push lap, spend one lap recharging the ERS, it might be the end of their qualifying session. It looks like Blackbird and Squids are on an out lap. Peter Ward may have wound up the wick to go for their flying lap. Oba Mendez looks to be moving along quite nicely as well. We'll see if they're going to find any improvements through this middle sector as they navigate their way past Well-Sized Lad.
So as Oba Mendez manages to keep the car facing in the right direction this time, does not spin the rears too much, and we'll get to complete this lap. So we'll see what sort of time Oba Mendez can do on what will very likely be their final run of the session. Just turn 10 to navigate now, keep it within the track limits, head to the line, and it's going to be a 1-6 almost flat as Oba Mendez moves himself up into P6.
It's a decent lap from them there to get just nearly onto the cusp of the 105s. And as one of our other broadcasters loves to say all the time, Herringzord, it's FRS. Qualifying doesn't matter that much. So we'll see how Oba Mendez, who's usually shown pretty good race pace overall, see if they can start to chew their way through the field and stay out of trouble. But track is getting busy. Everybody is on the track. Not a single car in the pit lane aside from Herbal.
As Blackbird
and Ivory
comes
Lightning
across
has
the
managed
line
to connect as well.
and improves, but not enough to challenge Ruprath. So it looks like it's going to be at least second best for Blackbird, as I don't think there will be enough time for him to, unless he wants to put on a second lap on those tyres, but flashing red light on the back suggests not.
Keep an eye on who else is on the lap. Looks like light is flashing on the back end of D. Lee there, so I don't believe they're going to be improving. We'll keep an eye on Well-Sized Lad. I think is going to be the next to cross the line. They're just about to pick up, see if they find any improvement. They find about a 10th, but still locked down to that P10 position. Squids was looking like one of the championship contenders in Div 4, is reserving this weekend. Usually they're casting this race, so interesting to see them on the grid this time. We'll see how they can find their way around the track. Have they managed to stay in bounds and keep it valid? They look to be a little off of their previous pace just from when I switched them. We'll see how they go coming across the second sector split. Have they found some time? No, they're down 3/10 on their best, so not going to be improvement as the checkered flag is out and waving. Ivory Lightning is about to cross the start-finish line, sets a 107.6, so puts themselves on to P11. Who's going to be next across the line? Squids is pulling into the pit lane. I think that just might about be... No, Dealey is improving, so he's continued to press on, has gone for that second lap. Found about a 10th of a second, only a couple of hundredths to move up ahead of Madsta, and they get it, go 1.5 tenths faster, and go up onto P3, so they pick up one more position there.
And it looks like Peter Ward is also pushing 2.5 tenths up on his previous best as well, which could be enough to put him ahead of a couple of cars ahead of him. It's quite a tight pack there from P6 down to P9, with less than a tenth separating them, so a couple of tenths improvement for Peter Ward could see him shoot up, and he does, up into P6 for Peter Ward. So a good final lap there, right at the death.
Strong lap there. I think the entire field spread was just, aside from Ivory Lightning, who only got the one lap in, 1.1 seconds across the top 10 is usually a good barometer, but look at that mid-pack. P6 down to P10, less than 2 tenths in it, 10.5. It's incredible.
Yeah, hopefully this close qualifying will translate into a nice close race, because although we've got a slightly trimmed down grid here for the race tonight, with lap times like that, they should be nose to tail for most of this race, I would hope.
Yeah, should be in for a good one. Of course, there are a few error generators where the back end kind of can step out and create some spins for drivers. That usually is really the only way around Austria you get the field to really spread out, because of course 3 DRS zones around a track this small, you're pretty much really got to struggle to clear DRS if you've got somebody behind you. Once you make that overtake, trying to find 1 second in between turns 4 and turn 10, it's really tough to do.
So as we just wait for the drivers to get ready to form up the grid, again, I believe we will not have a formation lap for tonight's race.
It is broadcast formation lap. There's still some tire temperature issues with the immersive formation lap. They did fix the issue with the broadcast formation lap having a virtually 1 sector fast lap time. And the no formation lap pretty much still plops you on cold tires. So it is a broadcast formation lap when I guess we're going to find out who you've got set. Do you have Croft or
gets underway and
you have
we have Alex Jacks.
Making sure their
Jakes,
car is
nice.
ready for the battle once the lights go out.
Well, looking up and down the grid, no soft tires on the starting tires. Oba Mendes and Ivory Lightning, the two opting for those hard compounds. I would expect that means most drivers are looking at the weather forecast and not seeing too much rain in this one. Of course, Austria does have the opportunity to change those weather conditions rather rapidly, though, so wouldn't be the first time we've seen a sunny race turn into something a bit damp by the end.
Yeah, definitely a possibility here at Austria. Up in the Styrian Mountains, there is every chance for a little bit of a precipitation. Oh, as our drivers line up on the grid, and that is a very confusing man waving a green flag there while we're still waiting for the green lights. As we have 5 red lights. Lights up, and we are racing in Austria, as it looks like it's a good start from Blackbird. Yep, gets the jump on Rupraf. As, there's all changing positions in the midfield. Oh, as we've got Delta the Hunter spun around, and so many cars have been collected.
3 cars are out.
So well side lad, Ivory Lightning and Delta the Hunter out of this race. And that was a horrific incident.
I was about to say it looked like they were about to navigate turn 1 just about clean, and then it looked like a big snap of oversteer from Delta. I don't know if they were touched or if they just got a little too eager on the throttle, but then just steered kind of sideways and collected 2 other cars. We've got a full safety car already in this one, so
unsurprising, full safety car. I mean, with all of that debris to clear up, the marshals are going to have their job cut out for them, I think.
Yeah, that's a rough start. Blackbird got a tremendous start to get off the line, take P1 away. D-Lee got swallowed up just a little bit, seemed to get a little slow off the line, but still managed to safely navigate turn 1. Peter Ward kind of backed out of a move in the Mercedes. It looked like he was going to have a run up the inside of the Aston, but then just kind of thought discretion the better part of valor. So Squid's into the pit lane. Madsta obviously into the pit lane because of that missing front wing entirely. It looks like just kind of taking it nice and easy on the way in. I thought for a second maybe they were waiting in case of a double stack, but no, Oba Mendes is out on the track. So it looks like just 2 other drivers making damage adjustments, but 5 cars essentially caught up in a turn 1 incident. That is a rough way to start the day.
As we see also a 5-second penalty there for Herbal, potentially must be for contact early in the race.
I would expect it would be such a one, since it is, if I can get race director up, that would be great. I will find out for you. Herbal, what do you got? Just says 5-second time penalty. Incidents. Collision with Ivory Lightning. That's an unfortunate one. I think they picked it up from getting collected by that incident. So that's one that if it stays eligible for removal at the end of this race, it will likely get taken away in the steward's room. But they really have to hope that there's no other safety cars after they serve it.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we say unfortunate to pick up a penalty for getting involved in that incident. I mean, I have to say in some way lucky that they didn't meet the same fate as Well-Sized Lad and Delta the Hunter. So
It's very true. It's only a 5-second knock to their race time as opposed to, well, hitting the showers early as parlance goes. But it looks like just Mazda is closing back up to the tail end of the safety car queue. I would expect they should catch the queue and we will be back to racing relatively quickly. Of course, with the full safety car being called, gonna have to wait a couple of laps for that DRS to be enabled.
if we take a look at the winners and losers at this point of the race, as we sit behind the safety car, as we saw moves from Blackbird and Brad Spitt, those drivers on the, I believe starting on the inside, as they do here at Austria, for the even positions, managed to get the jump on the cars on the outside. And Erbil there, up 4 positions, mainly from the collisions with the cars behind. So as the safety car is coming in this lap, Blackbird takes the mantle of the safety car and will back the pack up.
Really short safety car, and now that you mention it, of course, Erbil did not pit under the safety car for damage repairs yet. Clearly, they hit someone. They hit Ivory because that's what they've been given that 5-second penalty for. So, must have just hit it in the right spot of the car to not do damage to that front wing or snap that suspension off. As we wait to see when is Blackbird gonna go for it.
And
Waiting, and there they go.
Looks
They've
like
gone now between
Blackbird has
turns 9 and
pounced.
10. It looks like they may have caught Ruprecht just a little bit napping there. It's already just about a second almost the gap as they head down into turn 1. So they've gotten a very good restart on this one, and now we'll keep an eye on the mid-pack. Is that Erbil dropping down the pack?
A yellow flag, yep, and that is
Erbil has
Erbil
spun
out
out of
into
turn
the runoff of turn 1. And we'll need to get themselves going again.
And that's that mistake area that you pointed out in qualifying, where you just get a little bit too much right foot down and you can get right into the pit exit kind of area. Luckily, they did not get bit by the parked in a dangerous location DSQ. It would be heartbreaking if they survived a big crash and then got DSQ'd for something so minor.
It seems that Blackbird has run away a bit at the front, but behind him there is a battle brewing over second place as Ruprecht, Brad Spitt, D. Lee and Peter Ward all within less than a second of each other. We need to wait a couple of laps before DRS gets re-enabled here. And once it does, we could see quite a battle emerging.
Yeah, they're just starting to stretch their legs away from the cars behind. Oba Mendez, the first of the hard tire runners, losing a bit of ground, relatively expected compared to the mediums, but that means that if they're only losing a couple of tenths a lap, they're probably on race pace right there with this group. And once the mediums start to degrade and the hards kind of come into their own, we could see this train turn into quite a long one, really, as Oba Mendez and Mazda and Squids are all going to start to close back up to the pack probably in about 10 laps time.
Yeah, and especially as we've already had one safety car, if we end up with another safety car, it could be an opportunity for these runners on the hards to start thinking about whether they can hold out long enough to make the switch onto the softs instead of the mediums, take advantage of just a little bit more pace into the second half of this race.
Yeah, it looks like we are expecting pretty much a dry race throughout in this one, so I don't believe we're going to see much more than a couple light clouds in this one. So weather primarily not going to be a factor. That could have been an opportunity where the hard tire runners could just go all the way till some weather, since they have essentially the entire race is the pit window, as DRS is now enabled, and Dealey's just about inside that 1 second. Are they going to hold it as they come through turn 1? We'll have to see whose wings flip open come down the straight. Looks like, yes,
the rear wing
Aston
of
Martin
Dealey
does
has
have that
opened.
letterbox open.
So it looks like Peter Ward has just dropped out of that DRS range of D. Lee.
looks to have gotten a pretty good run out of turn 3 as well. Closing up on Brad Spitt, not quite going to be in a position to attack, but just a little further up the road for the lead of the race. Ruprath is now just a half a second off of Blackbird. Either Blackbird made a mistake or Ruprath got the tires fired up and is now starting to really close the gap up and try to retake P1.
Yeah, I wonder if we missed a mistake from Blackbird, because that gap from Ruprath to Brad Spitt has not really extended, but the gap from Blackbird to Ruprath, that closed up almost in an instant. And this is really putting Blackbird under some pressure now, as Ruprath is in DRS range. This is really the DRS zone for closing. As we come around turn 1, that will be the first of the DRS zones for overtaking. Although it does look like Ruprath had a little bit of a scrappy exit there from turn 1, just taking a bit too much at the curb on entry. As compromises run up the hill somewhat. So we come into turn 3. Better turn there from this time from Ruprath, but that small mistake from Ruprath has allowed Brad Spitt also to close up. So we're getting a little bit of a DRS train for the lead here. With the top 4 all with... within that DRS range of each other. It's just Peter Ward who has dropped back a little bit.
And Madsta's fighting with Peter Ward now as those two are duking it out into the middle section. Oh, yellow flag. Why are there yellow flag? There's a car stopped on the exit of turn 3. There's a full safety car that's been called. There's another safety car coming out. Nobody's retired, but Herbal had a spin out of turn 3 and was parked for a while. I don't know if they've sustained. Yep, they've sustained some pretty big wing damage. So they're missing the nose of the car. And once again, the racing takes a moment.
Well,
is anybody going to opt to blink any of those medium tire runners to come in and go for that that early stop and go long? It looks like all the leaders have driven past the pit lane, may have not had enough time to react. The hards can get to the end of the race from here, so it is an opportunity. But I will say, with the battle between Blackbird and Ruprath, I went into the lap times and sector times. It didn't look like anything particularly bad or a mistake from Blackbird. Ruprath just had an incredible sector 3 and sector 1 back to back, and they made a ton of time on Blackbird. So they just kind of turned in a mighty sector, and maybe Ruprath just didn't get enough heat into the tires behind the safety car and had to take a little bit of time to get them into the window off the restart.
So curious choice here from Herbal, going onto the soft tires. Now, as you mentioned, the hards could potentially go to the end of the race from here. So interesting decision from Herbal. Perhaps thinking they're going to be right at the back of the field, is going to want to try and make up some positions. But I would have thought they would have gone onto the hard compounds and try and ride it out to the end.
Yeah, because they're going to be able to freely catch up to the end of the pack here. And then if it happens to remain green flag racing the rest of the way, they would essentially just be able to stick in a DRS train. Then when everybody else pits, take the profits. But soft tires coming out, an interesting choice. Definitely wasn't one I would expect to see. Soft tires really only have about 10 to 12 laps worth of life in it, so they're going to be back in their own pit window on lap 8 or so. And they did get off of the medium tires, if I remember correctly. So it's not like they can really go onto another set of mediums at the end. They've only got the one set available to them. Yeah, they did start on the mediums.
Yeah, unless there's something that we don't know and there is rain coming before the end of this race. But looking at the sky, it doesn't look to be the case.
To take a bit of a moment to relax, and I haven't had the opportunity to follow it much, but now that I've got you in your element, how has the GT series been going over on the FRS sim side?
So it's been quite an interesting championship so far. We're definitely beginning to see who are our title contenders. We've got a number of the drivers from the FRS PC Division 1. Primarily in Hondas, it does seem, but yeah, some interesting racing there, and the sprint format really meaning some tight racing, and has to be wheel-to-wheel battling because we don't have any pit stops.
Yeah, maybe the the drivers are into the Hondas because they can't get into them in F1 anymore. Safety car in this lap, a pretty late call, so Blackbird's going to have to really back up the pack now. That may have been, I know a lot of drivers usually wait for the safety car in this lap call to really start putting in a lot of the tire warm-up. They may be all getting a little bit caught out, but
yeah, especially the likes of Mazda, Obermendez and Squids on those hard tires. It's going to be interesting to see, especially with Erbil just tucked in behind. What can the tire offset do for Erbil?
Squids is going to try and maybe have a look up on the inside of Obermendez. Not quite, but Obermendez already dropped 1.2 seconds, and now Erbil is on those soft tires. Are they going to be able to make an impression on Squids here? Of course, full safety car, another 3 laps before we get that DRS. Is he going to lunge it up the inside? No, he thinks better of it. So Erbil just there has got to try and make use of those tires because they'll be kind of on those medium to hard pace via degradation after only about 6 or 7 laps.
And up at the front of the field, it again looks like Blackbird really knows how to do a safety car restart. Has pulled out a 1.4 second gap ahead of Rupraf. And it is Brad Spitt and Dee Lee who are putting Rupraf under some real pressure here.
Yeah, it is a very tight fight. I mean, from P2 down to P7, even then, Obermendez is just on the 1.1 second mark, so they may actually even close into the DRS as they are just right there by the time it becomes enabled. Squids has dropped back a little bit from Obermendez. Looks like they are dealing with Erbil a little bit in this one, but still managing to stay ahead of the soft-shod Williams there.
As we can see, Mazda having a look at Peter Ward, this without DRS up the inside. And it's a good strong move there from Mazda. Oh, but out onto the sausage curb. Does not get the exit he'd be hoping for. And, well, you can see that has cost him all the way down this long back straight.
Yeah, it looked like he went just a little bit deep, allowed Peter Ward the opportunity to go for the up and under, even if he didn't get it a little out of shape on that curbing. But once he touched that sausage curb, it was a good job by him to not put the car on the inside wall. It's so easy. The car rotates right and then just wants to, like there's a magnet, shoot to the inside of turn 3 like that.
And so our battle over P2 commences, but again we're seeing it from Blackbird and Rupraf again. Rupraf's closed that gap down. It does seem that maybe Rupraf not so attentive on the safety car restart, does allow the car ahead to get away, but now is putting in the lap times and is beginning to draw in Blackbird. Is now in DRS range. You can start to think about attacking over the next few laps.
Case where Rupraf likes to be in a rhythm for race pace. You know, that interrupted kind of stop-start of the safety car, not ideal, but once they get a couple laps in, they get settled in. They really turn in some very good lap times, and they're starting to just about hang inside that DRS range now. I'm sure Blackbird's probably going to be burning a lot of battery to try and stay ahead.
Again, we're seeing the same 4 battling it out at the front. And with Peter Ward just dropping away a little bit and is in his own little fight there with Mazda. Peter Ward, a driver who's just recently moved up into PC Division 3, having been previously in Division 4 just a few weeks ago.
They took part in the PC. Oh, that looks like Squids is around just at the pit entry.
Ooh, needs to be careful to not get stopped in the pit lane. Managed to get it going again. Is there damage on that McLaren?
Seems to have used a healthy amount of reverse gear there to get as far away from the auto reset or the blocking pit lane area as carefully as possible. Now, we're on lap 13 of 36 here. We're pretty much entering the pit window for the medium tire runners to come in and switch to the hards. Usually lap 12 to 16 is about when you want to make that change, as it looks like Mazda making a move on Peter Ward now. They're kind of dueling through the corners. Side by side they go through turn 5. The inside turns to the outside for Peter Ward. It looks like he's got the nose ahead and is going to hold that position. But are we seeing now those hard tires start to come into their own and be a little bit quicker than the mediums?
Does seem to be. We're at that crossover point, and it's going to be now how long can Peter Ward keep Mazda behind him as Mazda looks to the inside, not close enough to make a move. Has to stay behind now, but it looks like it's only a matter of time before Mazda gets this move done. He's beginning to have the tyres come towards him as we see the flashing harvesting light on the back of that Mercedes as Mazda opens up the DRS and is right up the inside. Looks like he should have the move made before he even reaches the braking zone of the next corner. And
he was practically pushing Peter Ward through turn 1, got just an excellent run out of that corner. Should now start to be able to stretch their legs. And if Peter Ward is maybe taking a breath, at least there's not a Ferrari in their rearview mirror. Well, look again, because here comes Oba Mendes.
And be interesting now to see with Mazda clear of Peter Ward and on those slightly more intact hard tyres at this stage in the race. Do they have the pace to start chasing down this pack of 4 ahead of them as D. Lee dives into the pit road?
Yep, just about on time for the pit window. They should be going on to the hard tires. Careful not to pick up a speeding in the pit lane penalty, which is so easy to do, and we are starting to see our first track limits penalties rolling at Herbal and Squids, both now carrying 3 seconds worth of those time penalties.
And now we're a few laps after the safety car. We're seeing Ruprath managing to keep now with Blackbird lap after lap. So this battle is continuing on, and we're really going to have to wait and see who is going to blink first for the pit stops. And I'm sure these drivers will be interesting to see how D. Lee gets on once he comes out of the pits on those hard compound tyres. I think I'll ask you, Quimbus, if you can keep an eye on that race director screen, we can start to see what the difference in the lap times are between the compounds.
Most definitely, yeah. It looks like Mazda not making too much of an impression on Brad Pitt just yet, as Peter Ward is facing the wrong direction for a moment, gets back going, taking the classic Valtteri Bottas mowing the grass line. But we'll see how D. Lee has gone decent in the middle sector, a little quicker than their last lap, not quite on personal best pace. We'll see what their first flying full lap time is in another lap. They're still technically on their out lap, so their full lap time won't be quite right, but they do seem to be closing up to Squids at least.
And with Brad Pitt now having dropped away from the back of Blackbird and Ruprath, with D. Lee vacating that space, and meaning that now Brad Pitt, for a couple of DRS zones now, has not had the advantage and is beginning to drop back away from this pair. Actually, as I say that, he's now catching up again, so might be able to jump back into this DRS train and not lose too much time.
D. Lee's lost a ton of time. There was a yellow flag there at the apex of turn 1, and it looks like D. Lee has had a bit of a half spin. From my angle, I don't see any damage on the front wing for them, so they seem to be about healthy. But they've lost a ton of ground to Squids. They were right next to them, essentially, as Blackbird blinks first. Out of the lead of the race comes the Red Bull into the pit lane. So Ruprath inherits the lead, and now we're going to see undercut or overcut. Which is going to be the better strategy today?
So as the Red Bull comes out of the pit lane, doesn't look like they're going to emerge into any traffic. I don't see any cars coming up from behind, so this could be a decent opportunity for Blackbird to get out and start to show what sort of pace they can put on these new hard compound tyres, as Ruprath continues to lead this race at the moment.
And Squids had another spin and out of turn 9 there for a second. They've gotten going again. I think they just kind of spun across the runoff, but now they're just kind of ahead of Peter Ward, who is pushing on. And Squid's still going to need another pit stop before the end of this race.
And something we may have missed out on is Brad Pitt has also been through pit road and picked himself up a shiny new set of hard compound tyres and emerges, well, after the half spin you mentioned, 6 seconds ahead of D. Lee. So the undercut not working out for D. Lee there. And turns out to make that work, you do need to keep your car pointing in the right direction.
Blackbird has managed to keep their car pointing in the right direction, as Ruprath just 1 lap later is making that stop. On go the fresh hard tires. And it looks like Blackbird just crossing the start-finish line now as they're going to just come into the screen there on the outside.
And this is going to be close, and we're going to, so it looks like Blackbird is going to get back past as they've got the extra little bit of pace coming through the first corner, and they will have their tyres up to temperature now. It remains to be seen how quickly can Ruprav get their tyres up to temperature. Their tyres will be just that 1 lap younger, so there's not going to be a huge tyre offset between these two drivers. And well, we are back as we were. Blackbird ahead of Ruprav as we head into the second and I imagine final stint of this race.
Yeah, and I think we essentially learned there is that the undercut is basically even Stevens. They were just about 1 second. It may be a half a second worth of time. Ruprath was just inside the DRS zone of Blackbird before the pit stop phases, and now 1.1 seconds, and they should be just about up to temperature now on those hard tires. The plus side is once you suffer through turn 3 and turn 4, you have turns, the complex of turns 5, 6, 7, 8, where you really load both the right and left tires pretty hard. It puts some temperature into them real quick.
Yes, well, Ruprav has now closed back up into DRS range, so we are back as you were. It is now Blackbird versus Ruprav, round 2, as we have just over 16 laps of this race remaining. And is Ruprav going to continue to apply the same amount of pressure to the back of Blackbird up until we see the checkered flag?
Yeah, and one thing to keep an eye out for, Mazda's hard tires, 17 laps old. Full green flag racing conditions, you can get them to 34 laps without puncturing. We've had a couple of extra laps of safety car in there. Is Mazda going to try and take this, roughly 10-second gap back to Blackbird and try and see if they can hold on over the course of these remaining 16 laps? It's possible. You don't get too much lap time drop off with the hard compound tires. It's just pretty much all dictated by your fuel load.
Yeah, and for Oba Mendes, I'm sure is going to be praying for a safety car sometime in these intervening laps before he needs to make his first pit stop. Because that could see the Ferrari driver getting quite some gains, as there's a few gaps now appearing in the midfield.
Yeah, really the only fight inside the 1 second still is the one we've been watching all day, Ruprath versus Blackbird. It's been a tremendous fight since, they both left the front row of the grid. Blackbird got that incredible start, took P1 away from Ruprath, and been kind of as they were for the rest of this race so far. Ruprath closing up after restarts, eating into a gap, but not quite making a move stick for long term just yet. We'll see if they are just kind of maybe biding their time. All you got to do is be the first across the line on the last lap. You don't need to lead too many of them. Yeah,
and it does show that those race starts are true skill and one worth practicing, because Ruprav, showing that he's had some serious pace here, has always managed to catch back up to Blackbird once they get into some good rhythm. But Blackbird, with that awesome start and that jump off of the line, has took the lead and has managed to hold on to it so far. But now Ruprav putting Blackbird under some real pressures, closing up within 0.3 of a second. Needs to concentrate on getting a good exit from turn 3 at the top of the hill, or the slight move to the inside, as Blackbird covers the outside well and just doesn't allow Ruprav to get the power down as early as he would have liked.
Just about covering that off on the outside there, Blackbird. It's tricky as the overtaking car with the way turn 2 is the racing line kind of sweeps across the track, and then you don't know whether the driver ahead of you is going to trace out and cover the inside line or hug the curbing and stay on the outside line. And you got to kind of have almost a guess, because the braking zone comes up very quickly after that, as Blackbird has caught Oba Mendes at a rate of knots, but Mazda still roughly 10 seconds out. The gap between Mazda and Blackbird is about the same. It's just Oba Mendes that's been falling back.
Yeah, and Oba Mendes could really help his team out here if he could just hold these two back, just even for a couple of corners, just to really give Mazda that little bit more of a gap, a little bit more of the offset to hold on for these remaining 15 laps of this race, as Blackbird looks to the inside of Oba Mendes. not made it past yet, as we've got yellow flags in the third sector, as we've got squids off track. As we continue to watch this battle, which will be rapidly approaching the stricken squids.
Looks like Squids has gotten going again. There's that little look to the inside. You can sense kind of the frustration of Blackbird being caught up behind the slower Ferrari at this point. There's just such a tire offset between them. You know, had that look, maybe thought about sending it down the inside, thought better of it, because of course, look at that. Ruprath is pressuring him so hard as well. I mean, there's only about a tenth of a second in it between them, and that is a McLaren facing the wrong way. Luckily, well out of the way. But has to wait just a little longer. The Aston will come through, and that should allow Squids to do that pirouette and spin turn and get back going in the right direction. But
I'm sure that must have
Squids expected.
Given a bit of confusion for these this pack as they approach the rearward-facing McLaren. Not quite realising this was not meant to be a two-way facing street. Oh, as there's contact between Obermendez and Blackbird, and that was. A little bit clumsy there from Obermendez. Especially the repeated bumps afterwards.
Yeah, that was pretty a fairly clumsy one there. It looked like they tried to defend the inside on Blackbird. Went a little bit deep, but of course with Ruprath arriving on the scene as well, they kind of just all got sandwiched together. And well, Ruprath is now ahead. Brad Spitt has snuck their way through while that was going on. I didn't even notice that until I looked at the leaderboard.
And now
D. Lee is 11.4 seconds back.
D. Lee onto the back of Obermendez now, with Obermendez obviously struggling with that impact, as it looks like Obermendez diving into the pit lane. I imagine some slight damage on that front wing. Will we see a front wing change for the Ferrari?
Yeah, let's see. They've got one in their hands as they park it up. There is no new front wing going on.
Well, I believe there is. You just don't see it in the spectator mode.
Or no, I think they were holding him because
for the penalty.
5-second penalty. Yeah, because you would think the tires would still be moving if it was a front wing change, and he's back going. The 5-second penalty is not showing on the timing tower anymore, so I believe they were just clearing that 5-second time penalty. It was about the pit window for them to get a new set of boots on, but sure they would have liked to have been putting on a new set of boots, as Squids in the pit lane is retiring. So no worries about the safety car or anything for that.
Although the McLaren does appear to be moving again.
Yeah, it's the bug or feature that's been around as long as the FRS has been around, where you retire in the pit lane, you do your damnedest to get it right, and then you the AI just drives you out to the first marshal post and parks it.
Yes, now with that small incident, does mean we've now got a little bit of field spread appearing, as our closest battle is now Blackbird trying to find his way back through the order.
And I'm going to take a look at the lap times, because it could come down. We're just about 10 laps left to go, 11 roughly now. Mazda is lapping in the low to mid 109s at this stage. So they're pretty consistently in the 109.0 to 109.3 range. Ruprath on their new tires lapping roughly in the mid to high 108s. So they're finding not quite the full second that they need to get up to Mazda at the end of this one. And there's not going to be a huge drop-off in those hard tires at the very end for Mazda. They may be a couple of tenths a lap slower in the last couple of laps, but in the testing I've done on them, you're pretty much even on your lap times until they hit the cliff on like lap 32 of their life.
Well, we will see Mazda hit that lap 32 before the checker flag falls, so there is still hope for Ruprath, and no harm in keeping pushing, especially with the gap he has behind, just 3.1 seconds. But Blackbird has closed up to the back of Brad Spitt, and we've seen all day how much pace this Red Bull driver has.
Obermendez, as you would expect, sets the fastest lap of the race, going on to those medium competitions, although immediately picks up a track limits warning on turn 1 of the next lap. So they're getting themselves into a little bit of trouble. Now, one other delta that I'm going to keep an eye out on through this final stages, Brad Spitt is 3.2 seconds off the back. Mazda's into the pit lane. So Mazda not trying to stay out and go to the end. They may have had the pace to do it, but they're into the pits. So
soft tires
they're in a range where the soft tires can make it to the end. So they are going to be absolutely rapid. I think they'll come out somewhere around a couple seconds behind D-Lee. So they're going to have a little bit of work to do to catch up. Actually, it may be just about nip and tuck out of the pit lane.
Well, yep, he's now just behind D-Lee, and we'll keep an eye on Mazda for a little while, because this should be a, well, I imagine quite a straightforward chase now for Mazda with that that tyre offset.
Yeah, before Mazda came into pit, I was looking and trying to mention the gap between Brad Spitt and Ruprath is hovering right around that 3-second mark. Ruprath has 2 track limit warnings. So Ruprath is 1 warning away from potentially chucking away the race win. I don't know how many Brad has. Well, Brad only has 1.
With where Ruprath is sitting now, Mazda has cleared the way in front, so Ruprath has taken the lead of this race and maybe just needs to calm it down a bit. Does not need to risk a track limit violation at this stage of the race. Because especially with that gap to Brad Spitt just extending out a little bit, wants to just make sure that he can keep hold of this lead and not pick up any penalties.
And now I think Brad Spitt is probably going to lose this position on track to Blackbird, but they're in an opportunity with only 8 laps left to go. They could just tuck in with Blackbird carrying that 3-second time penalty, just tuck in and get towed around for the final few laps of this race, and they're going to jump them on the penalties and maybe even stick close enough to close up a little bit more towards Ruprath. But Mazda now on the back of D-Lee. They're coming down into turn 4, swings it out to the inside on the brakes with those extra grippy soft tires, and is a rather elementary move on that one.
Yeah, quite a straightforward pass, and does clear Mazda up to now start chasing down Brad Spitt and Blackbird. Just 3 seconds up the road. And surely we're going to see fastest lap go to Mazda as he rounds the final 2 corners. Been a rapid show of pace from Mazda so far on this lap. And there we go, a 1:07.2.
That is quite the mighty lap, and they're going to continue to push on using all the track limits available to them in turn 1 there, all the way up on that sausage curve. They've only got 2.8 seconds to catch up to the battle of Blackbird and Brad Spitt for a podium position. So,
if we take a look at the fastest laps, we can see that Mazda, with that lap he's just done, is 1 second faster than the fastest of Ruprath, which I can only imagine is again some way faster than the laps the Haas is putting in now. So Mazda with a real turn of speed and needs to take every advantage from these soft compound tyres that he can. As you mentioned, Brad Spitt actually still managing to hold on to the back of Blackbird. Has not dropped back, is just staying in that DRS range and being towed along by the Red Bull. But Blackbird is not making any impact into that gap ahead to Ruprath. So Ruprath 3.5 seconds ahead of Blackbird, with Blackbird holding on to a 3-second time penalty as well. But Brad Spitt will just be looking at Blackbird, seeing that penalty and knowing as long as he can stay in Blackbird's DRS, it's going to be P2 in this race. That is, of course, unless Mazda, who is forever charging behind, has anything to say about it.
Yeah, now for Mazda, it may be if Brad Spitt's able to stay close enough, he may find himself being caught in a little bit of a DRS train. However, that rear light has been flashing on that Alfa Romeo for quite a while. I'm sure he's been using quite a lot of battery to stay with Blackbird. He's just hovering right at about that 0.9 of a second mark. So Mazda's really just on an absolute tear this lap. Those soft tires, as you would expect, being absolutely rapid.
As we saw with the pass on D-Lee, I'm not sure if Mazda really needs the DRS to get by, can potentially just use the tyre advantage to make a move in the final sector. As Brad Spitt picks up a 3-second time penalty, so now that penalty game between Blackbird and Brad Spitt has been neutralised as Mazda moves to the inside of Brad Spitt and is up into P3.
Ruprath just needs to keep it clean over the last few laps in this one. Just about 5 laps left to go. And Mazda got 1.4 seconds now to find to get past Blackbird, but I think those soft tires may start to lose a bit of their traction. And it may be a bit of a tall ask to get anywhere beyond P2. I mean, I was questioning the decision to gamble and go for the pit stop. May have put them off the podium, but
well, it's certainly given us something to talk about.
Oh, certainly, yeah.
I'm not going to complain. From when this race was looking like it was settling into just a drive to the end, Mazda gives us something to watch as he starts to tear down after Blackbird. A move on track which may not necessarily mean anything, with Blackbird carrying those 3 seconds of time penalty, but it will clear up Mazda to have that final couple of laps dash to see if he can catch up to Ruprath. With a 3.7 second gap ahead of Blackbird, I think it might be a little bit of a tall order for Mazda to hope to close up, but well, we can imagine he's going to give it a go, especially as you mentioned with Ruprath being on those 2 track limit warnings. There's every chance that all Mazda needs to do is close up a couple of seconds once he gets past Blackbird.
Yeah, all it takes is one little mistake, and instead of having to make almost 4 seconds and an overtake, Mazda would just have to make like 0.7 of a second up, and well, that's a bit smaller of a mountain to climb than the 1 second. However, I think Ruprath is probably in bring it home mode at this time, you would think. However, they are extending the gap to Blackbird on lap, so they may still be hustling it around.
As Mazda now with the DRS flap open as they come up to turn 3, goes to the inside, still seeming to have that tyre advantage at this stage of the race, and makes the move, and still has DRS for the next straight, so should be able to extend that gap back to Blackbird. Not that the old tyres on the Red Bull will be much of a threat anyway. And now we see how much
is able to see Ruprath in a couple of these corners just ahead of him. And once you get visual contact of the car head, you start to push a little bit more. You see that little bit of motivation trying to egg him on. And 3 laps to go, 3.4 seconds. It's not outside the realm of possibility.
As Ruprath has just started the 34th lap of this race. We have 3 laps to go. And well, Blackbird holding on to the coattails of Mazda as he drags him around this Red Bull Ring circuit. As Peter Ward picks up another 3 seconds of time penalties. Take a look at the penalties that the drivers are carrying at the moment. It is 3 seconds to most of the drivers, but interesting to see that D. Lee not holding any penalties whatsoever, whereas Brad Spitt ahead with the 3 second time penalty. D. Lee just needs to make up 0.4 of a second to find himself in that window behind Brad Spitt, so certainly going to be motivated to push on and try and close that gap up, but does seem to be just extending ever so slightly at the moment.
Yeah, and this last lap, Mazda hasn't made really any mark into Ruprath's lead here. The tires are 7 laps old. That's about the time that they really start to lose their extra performance. 108.4 for Mazda that last lap. Ruprath, give me one moment, I'll find it, has done a 108.2. So Ruprath actually quicker on that last lap than Mazda.
It will be interesting to see because Blackbird is continuing to hang on to the back of Mazda may be able to make a move on the Ferrari. However, is carrying that 3-second time penalty. So Mazda's tyres would have to really fall off a cliff for this to really benefit Blackbird.
Much to ask for 3 seconds in one lap. However, once that tire grip gets low, there is the opportunity for loss of traction and spins. So it's not completely impossible. It's unlikely. Mazda can essentially just kind of cruise around. I mean, 3.4 seconds, not really going to be something they're going to close up in one lap, as Ruprath is about to start the final lap of this race.
As we say, this Red Bull Ring circuit is made up of mistake maker corners, so still every opportunity for someone to come a cropper. But Mazda just needs to keep himself cool. Doesn't really need to worry too much about the Red Bull behind him, as we have a yellow flag in the third sector. That is Peter Ward, who's just managing to get going again, and is under a bit of pressure himself from Ober Mendes behind. Though Peter Ward carrying those 6 seconds of time penalties means that that position will end up going to Ober Mendes once the checkered flag drops, I would imagine. So looks like Blackbird is going to end up staying stuck in behind Mazda. But as our race leader approaches the final couple of corners, it is Ruprath who will take the checkered flag and take the race win here in the Red Bull Ring in Austria. And he will be followed by Mazda, Blackbird and Brad Spitt. We have D-Lee. And then we'll
just 0.2 of a second, nearly getting up extra position for D-Lee, just 0.265 from moving up another spot. But a great drive from Ruprath. It was a great battle between them and Blackbird all race long. Unfortunate that Blackbird got caught up in that incident and ultimately kind of cost them, I think, the race win. Mazda, great drive to go hard to soft and claw their way back through. So stellar drive from Mazda today.
Yeah, it's been great driving from, well, to say all of our top three in tonight's race. There was, at any given point, an opportunity for any of them to win, with Blackbird leading the way for most of this race. And, well, some sensational driving. But at the end of the day, it is Ruprath who takes the win and will take the trophy. So big congratulations to the Haas driver, who gets the top step of the podium. And, well, actually, other big shout out to Mazda. We didn't think that his hit to the soft tyre was the sensible one, but he managed to claw it back and gained a good number of positions in that race.
Yeah, most definitely a way to claw it back now.
So,
I'm sorry to do this to you, but I got a dash because PC Division 2 is about to start in like 5 minutes.
oh,
But thank
well,
you for letting me crash your stream. Thank you for covering PC Division 3 this week. And best of luck to the remainder of the season for the GT series as well.
Well, before you go, if I can trouble you for a driver of the day.
Driver of the day. I'm going to go with Mazda, personally. I think he's just turned in a great drive. Ruprath was up there, as was Blackbird. They all turned in great races, but I think the daring strategy and making it work, if a driver can run a strategy that makes me scratch my head and it works, they get my driver of the day.
Yeah, I can't really look beyond Mazda for that one. Got caught up in that Turn 1 incident. Thought it could have been a bit of a nightmare race for the Ferrari driver, but nope, managed to turn it all around and bring what looked like an interesting strategy good in the end. So, well done to Mazda. Well done to our race winner Ruprath and Blackbird for rounding out the podium. And thank you for joining us, Quimbulus, for tonight's commentary. I've been your host, Roy Weller, and to please tune in for the PC Division 2 race, everyone, as we will go over and hopefully find that to raid.
Yep, I'm getting it started up just about now.
Excellent.
All right.
So, do go and give your love to Quimbilus over on the FRS Motorsport channel. And, well, would be remiss of me not to give a plug to come back in a couple of weeks' time, where we will have the next round of the FRS GT series on this very channel.